Coming up on this episode, the national team crowned European champions half a century later, the ultimate big v small friendly inspired by the sweeper, and the Italian club infiltrated by the mafia. Hello, and welcome to The Sweeper, the World Football Podcast made in association with FIFA Plus. I'm Lee Wingate.
And I'm Paul Watson.
And Paul Watson, I'm really excited for this episode today. Not only have The Sweeper inspired a potential international friendly, which we'll tell you more about later, we've also been travelling internationally again, where will become fairly obvious soon, because, Paul, we have a new men's Euros winner, even though no tournament has been played. Who are the last men's national team to have been crowned European champions?
Well, this is a great pub quiz question, isn't it? It's Slovakia, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. UEFA last month crowned Slovakia as co-winners of Euro 1976, but without any statement as to why, simply by updating the honours roll on their website. And so we decided to explore. We looked into how successor nations are determined, we spoke to a UEFA insider, and we even went to Bratislava to get the Slovak take. We're going to tell you all about it in part one, but to set the scene, we're first going to go briefly back in time half a century to Euro 1976. Now, Paul, this was before our time, but some things happened at this tournament which are still very much present in football today. Do you want to hazard any guesses?
Yeah, I do. I mean, given the context of the podcast, was this Czechoslovakia's year? Was this the year they won the Euro? I'm guessing it probably was.
Yeah.
But there was quite a memorable penalty, was there not, that clinched it for them? And I think this is something that's lived on and something that's talked about indirectly almost every few weeks, really.
Yeah, the Panenka, the cheeky chip down the middle, the epitome of composure. It is a penalty kick which now has become part of football parlance, really. But I think a lot of people that use the word Panenka don't know that it was Antonin Panenka's chip down the middle that won Euro 1976 for Czechoslovakia against Germany.
Panenka! Oh, it's genius!
I think what's also quite interesting about this tournament is it's the first international tournament where penalty shootouts were used, because prior to 1976, back in 1968, a coin toss was used to decide Italy's semi-final versus the USSR.
Isn't that incredible? I mean,
yeah.
People always talk about penalties being a lottery if they're angry, so it's a lottery. How can you decide it with a penalty shootout? Well, I think it's a lot better than tossing a coin, isn't it?
Would certainly agree. Also, and I think this is a record that will stand forever, because this was only a 4-team tournament, it's the only major international tournament where every game went to extra time.
What? I didn't realise. So it was 4 teams. I presumed it was 8 for that, because I know the Euro traditionally was always smaller, wasn't it? But I didn't realise it was just 4 nations.
Yeah, but I mean, really, for these kind of tournaments, the qualification was the tough part, because you used to have to win your group and then win a playoff to get a spot at the European Championships back then.
Oh, right. So you basically did all your work in the qualification, and then you got to the tournament. It was over within, 2 games? It's kind of an odd format, but also an interesting perspective there that this was the first ever penalty shootouts at a major tournament, right? And Panenka responded in that way with this absolutely cold, clinical penalty.
Yeah, and Germany lost, which is something that you don't often hear about in the context of penalty shootouts. I think from a geopolitical perspective, it's also super interesting because 3 of the 4 countries that took part in this tournament no longer exist in their current form. You've got West Germany, Yugoslavia, and Czechoslovakia, along with the Netherlands. So now that tournament, you look at that lineup, most of it doesn't exist anymore. Czechoslovakia first eliminated the Netherlands 3-1 after extra time, and then they beat Germany 5-3 on penalties after a 2-2 draw. And a little known fact about the final, I think, is that there were 8 Slovak players. Now, out of Czechia and Slovakia, Czechia is definitely the bigger country, and yet there were 8 Slovak players in the starting 11 for the final versus only 3 Czechs.
That's a very interesting fact. And I suppose it ties into this whole thing that for years, this tournament was regarded as a Czech victory. If you'd asked me, I would have said, it was a Czech victory. Obviously, I know Czechoslovakia was the two countries put together, but I always had assumed it was a more Czech side than a Slovak side. So that's a really interesting fact.
Yeah, I think it brings about a whole interesting chat about successor nations. And that's what we're going to dive into now. Because how are successor nations determined? How do we decide what those previously existing countries are now known as and who inherits their records? So let's dive into it. Fast forward 17 years from the Euro 1976 final. And on the 1st of January 1993, the Czech Republic and Slovakia split into two independent nations, and it was part of a wave of changes to the map of Central and Eastern Europe in the 1990s. You had, of course, the reunification of Germany. You had also the USSR, which broke down into 15 independent states. And this is quite an interesting one because FIFA and UEFA at that time followed international law, with the country that continued the USSR's UN membership also continuing its football membership and inheriting its records. So Russia took on the USSR's UN membership and they also inherited its football records. So Euro 1960, won by the USSR, nowadays regarded as being won by Russia. Then it gets slightly more complicated with Serbia and Montenegro. So they claimed to be the successor state of Yugoslavia, and they asserted that they should retain Yugoslavia's UN membership. But the UN said it could not continue and had to apply as a new member, but nonetheless, FIFA and UEFA still treated Serbia and Montenegro as the successor nation. And when Montenegro declared independence in 2006, it stayed with Serbia. So Serbia is regarded as the successor to Yugoslavia. But that brings us on to the curious case of Czechoslovakia, because this was very much a peaceful and equal split. It's known as the Velvet Divorce, which is a lovely name, I think.
It's a lovely name. I feel like if you ever have to have a divorce, you want it to be a velvet divorce, don't you?
Yeah. Paul, if the Sweeper podcast ever breaks up, I hope it's a velvet divorce. Yeah, and there were no official statements about one country or the other inheriting the historical record. But I think what's quite interesting is there are more subtle indications about who inherits the record from UEFA and FIFA. So, for example, on UEFA's website, the Czech Republic's page lists all the records of Czechoslovakia as those of the modern team. There's a timeline, and you can see all of Czechoslovakia's and now Czechia's records. But on the Slovak page, it's slightly different. It just says a large contingent of Slovak players, as well as assistant coach Josef Vengloš, helps Czechoslovakia to win the European Championship. So it's subtle. It's not so clear cut. Meanwhile, on FIFA's website, it no longer has association profiles with history sections, but they used to attribute Czechoslovakia's appearances in the World Cup to the Czech Republic. So it used to say Czech Republic, 9 World Cup appearances, Slovakia, 1 World Cup appearances. And crucially, and the thing that we're talking about today, is the UEFA honours roll for Euro winners did not feature Slovakia officially.
Wow. That is very interesting. It was, so as you say, it was done in a way that was never open, but there was a subtle sort of way that Slovakia just wasn't getting recognised.
Yeah, and I think in view of how many Slovak players were in that first 11, there has been a long-held feeling in Slovakia that they should be recognised for this triumph. And there's been lobbying for many years on the part of the Slovak FA, from historians, from journalists. But it was only on the 12th of September 2025 when the UEFA website was updated to read that Slovakia was also on the honours list. Among the other countries that had won one European Championship, it said Czech Republic and Slovakia. And we know that this update happened on the 12th of September. We have had that confirmed by a UEFA insider. But there are no plans to make a statement about it. And it's all very curious, isn't it, Paul? No statement. It's just very subtle and very curious.
The no statement is really interesting. So it makes me wonder how anyone became aware of it. Was it that a Slovak journalist just came across the fact that had been updated on the UEFA page that they'd been listed, or because you see what I mean? Usually you put out a press release when you do something like this, and then that circulates, and that's where the news comes from. But I saw this from several sources, not a lot of sources, but I saw people saying this had happened, but it wasn't ever coming directly from UEFA.
Yeah, it was more like a Chinese whisper scenario. So all it takes, I suppose, is one person to go onto the page with the UEFA honours roll. They write about it, and someone else writes about it. They check it, and then suddenly it's all over the internet. And it's been widely reported. Reputable newspapers such as Gazzetta dello Sport from Italy have been writing about this as well. And we were very curious about why this has happened, why it's so silent, why now. So, through the help of a contact at UEFA, we have managed to find out the following things. The Slovak Football Association, as I said, has been lobbying for official recognition for years. And apparently the pace picked up following the death of the Slovak assistant coach for that team, Josef Venglos. But I had a look at when Josef Venglos died. He died back in 2021. So it's not like he died this year and it's been updated this year.
And it's funny because you say picking up the pace, but it's like the pace of what? They type
the lobbying, sentence. I guess. Lobbying.
But it's interesting, isn't it, that this sense of like there not being a clear timescale for how long that would take, and it's like, as you say, that was years ago now. So like, what has been happening to make this happen? I'd love to know.
Me too. And what we also know is there are no plans to change the engravings in trophies or plaques, nor, interestingly, are there any plans to recognise other successor nations. And I find that really interesting, Paul, because one of the comments that we got the most when we posted about this on social media, and it did go really viral, we got a lot of comments, as anything to do with geopolitics tends to do. We got lots of people saying, yay, Tajikistan, Euro 1960 winners, or stuff like that, because where do you draw the line? If you want to be consistent, where do you draw the line?
Yeah, and I wondered, when you were saying about how this was all done, I was wondering if it was done so quietly in order to prevent those kind of conversations, because while you have the velvet divorce here, and it doesn't sound like anyone in Czechia is going to be angry at this decision, it's a very peaceful one. When you start to talk about the USSR and you talk about Georgia and Ukraine, you're entering a slightly more thorny and explosive territory there, especially with what's going on at the moment, in Ukraine. So I wonder if partly why this has been done like this is to prevent the floodgates opening and having to make a decision on every single one of these potential successor nation questions.
Yeah, I mean, for the Euros, it's only really the USSR that is in contention because Yugoslavia never won it. But you can imagine how contentious that would be if Serbia were regarded as the successor to Yugoslavia's Euro triumph. As it is with the USSR, it's interesting because Russia is regarded very much as the dominant nation in the former USSR. But yet there was a squad that consisted of a handful of Georgian and Ukrainian players. So this whole question of where you draw the line is very interesting in view of that, I think, because there were 8 Slovaks, so do you need 8 Slovaks in the starting 11 to be regarded, 8 from one country to be regarded as a co-champion retrospectively? It's just a very, very curious thing, but there are no plans to make any more changes, and I think probably that was the easiest thing for UEFA to do, because now they can sort of draw a line under it.
Yeah, and I guess that's why it feeds into why I was so fascinated to see what the Slovak response to this was. Like, has this made waves over there, or is it like it has been over, the rest of the world? Has it somewhat slipped under the radar?
Yeah. And so, to find out, Paul, I headed across to Bratislava. Fortunately, being based in Vienna, it is very, very close. It's closer than any other major Austrian city. It's 55 kilometers away. They are the closest capitals in Europe, the second closest in the world after Brazzaville and Kinshasa in Congo and the DRC, respectively. And because I have this thing called a Klima ticket, which is this government initiative to get people to use public transport in Austria, and it entitles you to travel on any public transport at any time, anywhere in the country, it only cost me €2 to get each way to Bratislava,
No.
because Bratislava is so close to the Slovak border. Most of the journey there is on the Austrian side, that you're only paying for the tiny bit of the journey once you get over the Slovak border. So it's €2 each way.
€2. That's absolutely astonishing. I can't even get across Stroud, and Stroud's tiny town I live in. I can't get across there for less than that. So that's an amazing achievement, Lee. I'm very jealous.
Well, Bratislava, we've been to Prague, haven't we, together? And it's Prague, as many people will know who have been there, it's an incredibly beautiful city. And back in the days of Czechoslovakia, it was regarded as number one, whereas Bratislava was very much secondary to Prague. And I think the communist planners wanted to make it a functional regional capital. So you've got this really interesting mix of quaint, picturesque, gorgeous old town, and then sort of huge highways and modern apartment buildings cutting across them all. It's a really interesting mix. But once you get into the historical centre, it's really, really beautiful. And I went there for the day, had a little walk around, had a traditional Czech/Slovak meal of breaded cheese with tartar sauce, had a beer, but I also managed to speak to a few people on the street. And it's a strange thing to go up to people on the street and say, do you know your country is European champions from 1976? But mostly I was met with a wry smile and a, yes, we saw that on the news, we saw that on Instagram. Some people were saying, yeah, you know, like, it's nice, but it doesn't really change anything for us. But we also went to speak to a Slovak football podcaster to find out his take on it. So I met up with Matej Mutiš. He is the co-host of Futbalový Var, the winner of the 2024 Slovak Sports Podcast of the Year award, to find out what this belated Euro triumph means to Slovakia. This is our short conversation, and after that, we'll tell you all about our social media campaign to get the world's largest and smallest countries to play a friendly. Matej, lovely to meet you. We're in Bratislava, the home of the newest European champions, because as of September, Slovakia have officially been European champions from 1976. How has Slovakia reacted to this news?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for having me, and it's a big pleasure to be part of your podcast. So, actually, in a current situation in Slovakia, politically wise, it was a big thing. That there are not many things that we should be proud of, and we don't have many opportunities to cheer. So yeah, it was a really big thing. Nobody expected it, to be honest, but I think it was well deserved, because not many people know that there were, I believe, 8 players from Slovakia in that squad in 1976. So I guess fully deserved, and hopefully we are on a football map.
UEFA didn't make any statement about this decision. It was simply a case of an updated records page on the internet. Does the average football fan you meet on the street know about this? Because you're a podcaster. I've talked to a few people around town. They seem to know, but I wonder if it's gone under the radar for some people.
Yeah, it went under the radar. I mean, some media picked it up, but it wasn't really a big thing. So you have to be really a football fan to get this information. But still, yeah, it's great news for us, and it's all completely deserved. So, but the thing is that in our country, I think we lack this kind of positivity, and maybe we don't make most out of the opportunities to be proud of something, but that's another story. So might have been little better covered in the media, but some media picks it up, and I guess the football community knows already.
What about, do you think, the Czech reaction? How do you think your neighbours have taken this news? Because I think you said in the run-up to recording, there's been a little bit of maybe friendly banter between Czechia and Slovakia about this.
Yeah, as you said, it was more like a banter. I mean, nobody cried, nobody like really celebrated, and Czech football fans, they already made some big results in the past. So yeah, it was more like a big news for us here in Slovakia. But the thing is that many people in Slovakia don't know much about our past, about our history. And as I told you previously, maybe this would be a little better covered in the media. It would make us more proud, and this is what I like. But yeah, as you said, it was more like a banter. It was not really a big thing, but it was nice to become European champions.
49 years later. Well, let's talk about the Slovak national team now then, because a week before this Euro 76 update, Slovakia beat Germany competitively for the first time. At the Euro, you very almost beat England. Is there a chance at all that Slovakia could do a Denmark or a Greece and now win a trophy as an independent nation? Never say never.
I mean, hopefully, yes. In the last Euros 2024 in Germany, we were quite close, and we became, for the neutral fans, we became kind of a fan favorites, like Iceland a few years ago, and so on. So I think this is what suits suits us. And maybe yes, and again, I mean, we beat Germany, which was really, really big thing, and still the national football team couldn't link with most of the fans. I mean, it's a weird situation here in Slovak football because we have pretty good players playing it up, good teams. They are having great results. I mean, there are almost no scandals, no controversies, and still the link between the fans and the national football team is not good. The ultras are completely boycotting the national team. I mean, they have their own reasons, and I can understand that. Some of the fans, they don't like the idea to have a foreign manager, foreign coach, which is, from my point of view, doing great and having excellent results. So. Yeah, I mean, it's pity because it could have been much better. But I hope we'll make it all the way to these Canada and Mexico, and maybe we'll make some nice and big results. Who knows? Never say never, as you said.
What's your prediction then for the next international window? You're facing Northern Ireland and Luxembourg. How do you think Slovakia can do? If you get 6 points in the next window, that's 12 points from 4 games, and it will be hard for Germany to do something about that.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, Luxembourg is always tough. We've seen that a few weeks ago when we won in Luxembourg with a goal in the last minute, and Northern Ireland. I mean. With all respect to Northern Ireland, we have to get 6 points out of those 2 games. I mean, I love Callum Marshall. He'll be a big star. He's from my favorite team, from West Ham. So I follow him quite closely. But to me, this is 6 points for us. I mean, we have to take all 6 points. 4 points would be disaster. So we have to go to Germany for the last game with 15 points. I hope I count correctly, and then we'll be good. So yeah. We need to have 15 points and we'll be fine.
Mate, fantastic stuff. Thanks for speaking to us today, and we'll be keeping our fingers crossed for Slovakia in World Cup qualification. See you in Bratislava next time.
It's my pleasure, and yeah, all the best to your work. You do a wonderful job, so I'm your big fan. So hopefully we'll meet each other maybe next year in the US.
Well, Paul, what did you make of the interview with Mate? I think there were some interesting takeaways. I found it interesting that the Czechs and the Slovaks are now bantering each other about this 50 years later. And I also found it interesting that the Slovak team and coach aren't getting on with the fans. They don't like the fact that Francesco Calzone is a foreigner. That seems a shame. He's doing a fantastic job.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because I expected the mood to be really buoyant and positive, but actually the overwhelming sense is that fans are not particularly happy, which for a country that's just beaten Germany and, you know, they're doing really well in their qualification group, I think you got to feel a bit hard done by if you're the coach and you're not getting a nice response for that work, really.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a strange one. It's the kind of thing that whenever England have appointed a foreign coach in the past, you see all this chat in the tabloids about it should be an Englishman. I guess that applies to other countries as well, of course, but it just seems a shame because Francesco Calzone is doing so well. I also found it interesting that, you know, he's not ruling out the possibility of Slovakia winning a trophy as an independent nation. And to be honest, when you look at the fact that Denmark and Greece have won European championships, it might sound like a strange suggestion, but it is possible, as we've seen now in Euros.
Yeah, completely possible, and and I think when you think about it, there's only a few games you need to win. It's such a small period where if you hit form at the right time, anything could happen. And I was really impressed with them in their recent games. So honestly, I wouldn't be so negative. I actually thought he was a tiny bit less positive than you were about the possibility, which is interesting. Yeah. Maybe that's the same way that if anyone asks us about England's chances at any tournament, we sort of go, oh no. Whereas if you were from any other country, you'd probably think we'd think we have a fair chance.
I think we'll draw a line under our Slovakia, retrospectively crowned as Euro 1976 winners chat there. But let us know what you think in the comments on Spotify or on YouTube or wherever you're listening / watching this podcast. Let us know what you think about successor nations, if you think that they should completely draw a line under this and neither country should inherit the records, if they both should. We're interested to know what people think, so do let us know. But lastly, in part one, Paul, we're going to talk about how we have inspired a potential friendly. Now, on the last episode, we talked about the biggest and smallest countries in the world, or as FIFA nations. And so I did a post about that on social media around about 10 days ago now. And it was to say that we wanted to see a friendly between Montserrat, FIFA's smallest nation, and India, FIFA's largest nation by population. So Montserrat has 4,359 inhabitants. India has 1.46 billion. That is quite some difference, isn't it? And I posted that thinking, okay, this is just going to be one of our usual quirky sweeper social media posts. But it's gained a little bit of traction, hasn't it?
Yeah. I saw this, the governor of Montserrat reposted it and said, let's do this. She's well up for it. Yeah. And surely it doesn't go much higher than that, does it? I mean, that's a pretty big endorsement.
Yeah, the governor of Montserrat, Harriet Cross, reposting it and saying, let's do this. I find it interesting the people she tagged in that post, because it wasn't like the ones that are going to be making the decision. She just tagged India's Prime Minister, Narendra Modi.
In fairness, if Modi... Well, I'd be happy if Modi goes, yeah, let's do the friendly. That'd be great. But if Modi just said, everyone listen to the Sweeper podcast, I think that could help us with our numbers.
I certainly agree. The traction extends even further than that. We had Montserrat international Lyle Taylor writing on his Instagram stories saying he wants this to happen. The Discover Montserrat website, which is like sort of their tourism website, has written a whole article about the possibility. Interestingly, Indian football Reddit groups have been discussing it. And what I found most interesting about that is the sheer level of pessimism, saying, yeah, Montserrat will probably win that one.
Yeah, I mean, we were saying I was saying a few minutes ago about how Slovakia sounded like people were a little bit downbeat, and, it sounded like they're a little bit negative about their nation. There's almost no football fans that are less positive about their nation's chances than India's football fans. They've just been so disappointing for so long, considering the size of the place. I saw most India fans I saw were saying, "Oh, great, another game we can lose." That's great. I mean, I would love to see it played. I also don't think it would necessarily be an easy win for India at all. I think Montserrat are a very strong and quite difficult team to play, so I'd be fascinated to see it.
Yeah, the population stats are a bit misleading, aren't they? Because Montserrat have such a wide diaspora of players that they call upon, particularly in the UK and in sort of lower leagues in the English football pyramid, that it is slightly misleading. But nonetheless, we'd love to see it. And what do we need, Paul? We need the help of our listeners, because we are nothing without our listeners and our social media followers. So we're going to put the links to the post on Twitter and Instagram in the episode description. And what we would love you to do is to write a comment and tag the Indian Football Federation on both platforms, because we need to get their attention now. If we've got one party, we need to get the other. So that is at Indian Football. So all you need to do is comment and just say at Indian Football. And we're hoping, it's very unlikely that anything comes of this, but we're hoping that if enough people comment, they might see it and they might do something about it.
Yeah, tag in the Indian Prime Minister as well.
Yeah, why not?
Do you think if he gets enough, someone's going to tap him on the shoulder and have to whisper in his ear at some event, sir, there's a bit of an emergency here.
Yeah. It's Montserrat.
It's Montserrat. We feared this day.
Excellent. Well, I think that brings our part 1 to an end, but stick around for a series of brilliant Italian football stories in part 2, including the lower league club that were infiltrated by the mafia. Welcome back to part 2 of The Sweeper, and in this segment we're going to be discussing some really interesting stories from Italy, and in particular Serie C, the third tier of the country's football pyramid. We're going to begin with Crotone. What fate has befallen Crotone right down there on the south coast of Italy?
Well, they've been infiltrated by the mafia, so the club has had to be placed under judicial administration for a year, because police thought the club is effectively being dictated to by local mafia forces.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't it, that this is then put in the hands of essentially a legal supervisor. I wonder how far their reach extends, what they're allowed to do, what the club officials are allowed to do. And in particular, I wonder whether they themselves might fall victim to pressure from the mafia.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. There was a case a bit like this in Italy a little while back, a club called Nuovo Quarto, who were near Naples, and the mafia around there had owned this club. It was given to the local public when this mafia boss went down, and they said, look, take this club away. They really celebrated this was going to be a whole new club, but very quickly it became clear the mafia was not going to let it go lightly, and eventually the club effectively became unrunnable because everything they tried to do would go wrong, because the mafia still had such a hold on that local community.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think in this case, according to the report on The Guardian, the local mob had infiltrated the club's security and ticketing operations, which are apparently fairly lucrative for them. There is no insinuation of any guilt on the part of Crotone, is there? This is something that they have fallen victim to, rather than something they have entered into collaboration with.
Yeah, absolutely. And football clubs are absolute catnip to mafia groups. They work in various ways. They're a sign of local power, but also, just practically speaking, an absolute dream for money laundering. Money can go into football clubs, it can go into all different departments, and you get your money cleaned very easily. So yeah, we're not saying that anyone at Crotone Football Club is doing anything illicit intentionally. They are just having forces outside their control bear down on them.
When I looked into this in a little bit more detail, I was really surprised to see that they are not the only Serie C club that are currently also under judicial administration. That also applies to Foggia, after investigations uncovered extortion attempts, intimidation, and influence by local organised crime. The group is called the Società Foggiana.
Yeah, they, I think, were attempting to force the president out of the club, effectively lose control of the club, in order to really be able to take control. And so, again, yeah, this measure has been put in judicial administration, which sort of does sound like a punishment. It's not really. It's protection for the club. But as you alluded to, how much are you able to protect these clubs when so much of a feature of that community is the presence of the mafia and this powerful sort of control they exert on that region?
I mean, when it applies to so many clubs in the whole of the South group, because Italy's Serie C is divided into North, Central and South. And in the South, there are also 3 Sicilian clubs, not alleging anything improper at the moment, but in the past there have been connections between those clubs and various mafia. I think it's the Cosa Nostra, isn't it, that's in Sicily. I kind of wonder what the future holds, because it can only be a temporary measure, this judicial supervision, and what happens when they let go? It just feels like it can't be a long-term strategy.
No, and I think, as you say, it's a much wider societal issue. I think, interestingly, from what I was reading a little while back, different mafia groups in different regions have surges of power and then lose power, and it felt like the 'Ndrangheta were gaining, if anything, in power in Calabria, had become an enormously powerful force, whereas in other regions maybe the mafia hold is dying back a little bit. It's becoming less fashionable as well. There's also this assumption that everyone will necessarily want rid of the mafia. It's a much more complicated issue than that. There's a sense to which the mafia gained its hold by looking after a local community somewhat in ways that the national government hasn't. So it is quite a complicated issue. I'm not saying I'm pro-mafia, but it is very easy to just say it's all bad, everything's bad. But there's a reason why the mafia is able to get its grip on a certain area, and it owes a lot to the way society is structured and the way that certain areas have been neglected by national policy.
One club that is regularly making long trips down south to this sort of mafia haven of football clubs in the south of Italy is the Atalanta U23s, despite being based 1,000 kilometres north in Bergamo. We've had quite a lot of questions about this since we posted on Instagram, so we thought we'd take this opportunity to sort of look into why this happens. As I said, you have 3 groups in Serie C. You have the north, the central and the south. So why, Paul, are Atalanta in the south division?
Oh, I think it's because one of the under-23 teams has to go to the south because they can't all be in the same group, isn't it?
Yeah, there's 3 at the moment. You've got Juventus Next Gen, Inter Under-23s and Atalanta. And one of them has to draw the short straw of going down south. One of them then goes into the central group and one gets the good draw of staying in the north. And the way this is decided, essentially, seems to be on a case-by-case basis, but because it was Inter that went down south in 2024, in 2025 it was Juve, it seems like it was Atalanta's turn, basically, to do this.
God, what a tough thing it is as well. And I think I've seen that they get, stranded at airports. There's some horrible trips they have to make. And you can only imagine the eye rolling that takes place when they're lining up these fixtures.
Down in Serie D at the moment are Milan Futuro, the second team of AC Milan. One question that we have got is what would happen if they were to be promoted? If there were to then be potentially 4 reserve teams in Serie C?
I think they would either have to change the league format or they would just not be allowed to be promoted. Were Milan Futuro not relegated last season from Serie C?
Yeah, and that raises the interesting question of what would have happened if they hadn't been relegated. Would the Inter Under-23s have been able to come up from the 4th tier? I guess not. I guess they were lucky that the Milan Futuro side came down in the same season. But it's very strange business having these Under-23 teams in Serie C, and to be honest, I'm not sure I like this B team phenomenon, because you have it in Spain as well. You've got now Real Sociedad's B team are in La Liga 2, and I think it just denies the opportunity for other clubs to have their place in that division.
Yeah, and I think they're widely despised in Italy, these clubs. There's a sense that they shouldn't be in there at all. And I think you see that everywhere that B teams are being put into competitions. If they're being added in, people are saying, we don't want this. So yeah, I fully agree.
And next up in our Serie C roundup, Paul, Ternana. That's a club that has featured on the podcast before from Central Italy, so Group B of Serie C. What have they done to make major headlines recently?
Well, they've appointed 23-year-old Claudia Rizzo as their new president.
Yeah, she is the first female president in their 100-year history, the youngest president in Italian football at the moment, and one of the youngest club presidents in Europe. So how has this happened? Well, I hate to say it, Paul, but it sounds very much like being the daughter of a billionaire businessman, Gianluigi Rizzo, who owns the club, might have been a factor in this appointment.
What a fairy tale that is, then.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's interesting you mention, that we're talking about the club again, because we spoke about them last season when there was like a degree of chaos, wasn't there? There was some absolute weird coaching moves going on at Ternana.
Yes, so Gianluigi Rizzo, Claudia Rizzo's father, bought Ternana in September of this year from the D'Alessandro brothers. And last season, we talked about the fact on the podcast that Stefano D'Alessandro had sacked then head coach Ignazio Abate for not playing his own son, Mattia D'Alessandro, despite the club being second in Serie C at the time, and Mattia D'Alessandro mostly playing for the reserves.
Yeah, I remember that. I think it was player power that sort of saved the day, wasn't it? There was also this, I believe that the president relented, but didn't he say he had a phone call that had lasted a ridiculously long time? I remember us at the time saying, wait, you had a 5-hour phone call with the coach? Just the thought of what could take 5 hours to discuss with anyone ever, really.
Yeah. So the timeline goes, Stefano D'Alessandro sacks Ignazio Abate. Then they have a 5-hour phone call. Then Ignazio Abate is reinstated. And then, despite the club doing really well in terms of league position, I think he waited till they lost the game quite heavily. I think it was 4-1. And then, at the beginning of April, he sacked him again.
That's fantastic. I wonder if the 5-hour phone call just didn't happen that time. Maybe he hung up after 3 and then I'll sack him then.
It does make you think that whoever Claudia Rizzo is and whatever her plans are, surely the club must be in more stable hands now. Apparently, up until this point, she had been managing the family's olive oil plant in Sicily. I mean, nothing prepares you for a transition to professional football than that, does it?
No, and to be fair, she looks like a class act, and she speaks very well. A lot of the stuff she's saying sounds really good and positive. And it is good to have women running football clubs. There aren't enough of those. So, I do wish her all the best. As you say, I think we're just saying that the way she got the job is perhaps not the ideal way for someone to be given the role.
Believe it or not, she is not the youngest female club president in world football. That honour goes to, in the Jamaican League, 18-year-old Casey Butler, who is in charge of Phoenix Chapelton Maroons. I must admit, it's not the catchiest club name, and it's one I'd never heard of before researching this story.
I never heard of them either. And I'd like to think I know more Jamaican clubs than most. No, I've never heard of them.
Yeah. Apparently what happened here is it's a similar situation to Claudia Rizzo. So her father, Craig Butler, founded the Phoenix Academy Group, which in August 2025 acquired the operational and developmental rights to the Chapelton Maroons for a period of 10 years. So again, it's a case of a wealthy businessman appointing his daughter to fulfill the role. So I'm very split on this because I believe in merit-based appointments, but as you say, it's also great to see women getting the chance to run football clubs as well.
Yeah. I'd like to believe there's an interview process when they do this as well. Wouldn't you love it if there was everyone sat outside waiting for the interview and it's like, I don't think I'm going to get it. Oh, wait. You're his daughter. you might get it.
or if the dad interviews his own daughter.
Yeah, I'd love to see it done. But as you say, it's a mixed thing. But I do really hope it works out for Ternana as well because, the club deserves a bit of success.
Okay, last up today, we're going to tell you about the top flight football club with one away fan. Kind of. But first, if we have whet your appetite for the Italian third tier, then you'll be pleased to know that a selection of Serie C games are shown live and in top quality on the free streaming platform FIFA Plus. So whether it's the Atalanta U23s and their long away trips, Torres on the stunning island of Sardinia, Ternana and their new president, or mafia-infiltrated Crotone, Italy's third tier has a wide range of incredible narratives and storied clubs on show. And if you want a team to follow personally in the division, we will handpick one for you, won't we, Paul?
Yeah, we will. And I love doing this. I'm a huge fan of Italian football, love Serie C. What I will caveat this with saying, it's a very hard league to select a club because so many of the clubs go bankrupt or just implode. So apologies to people who I recommended very heartily that they follow clubs only to see those clubs disintegrate within months. I'll always do the best I can.
Yeah, we can handpick clubs for you, but we can't foresee the future, so I don't think we can accept the blame for that. Simply send an email to sweeperpod@gmail.com with the subject line My FIFA Plus Team and what you're looking for in a new club, and we'll put our heads together. To watch Serie C and live football from plenty of sweeperish leagues around the world, simply sign up for free using the link in our episode description. The whole sign-up process takes less than 2 minutes. I know I've done it myself. And the platform can be streamed on laptops, tablets, smart TVs and phones. A big thank you to FIFA Plus for teaming up with the Sweeper. All right, Paul, we're going to move slightly up the Italian football ladder now to Serie B. And in September, an intriguing club friendly was organised by FC Südtirol. You may remember that's the club that I visited last September, based in a sort of half Italian, half German speaking region in the north of Italy, in what used to be Tyrol. But that's a topic for a couple of minutes' time. They played against the Austrian Bundesliga side WSG Tirol. So it was a battle of the two Tirols. They come from Bolzano in Italy in South Tyrol and Wattens in Tyrol in Austria, respectively. And both of those places used to be part of the same region back in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And then in World War One, the Allies promised Italy territorial gains for joining the war against Austria-Hungary. And after the war, Italy acquired this region that used to be part of Austria. And that's why now there's still such a big German-speaking influence. And when I walked around the town, you can see street signs in both Italian and German. It's a really weird mix of places. You can talk to someone on the street and they won't speak the language that you're speaking to them in. So I spoke to a security guard at FC Südtirol in German, and he was just like, no, solo italiano, like only Italian. So it's a really, really interesting place. But I thought this was a very interesting friendly, and I posted on Instagram, because it was a 0-0 draw, we can't help thinking that a winning team's country keeps all of Tyrol agreement might have made it a more attacking game. And you'll never guess what, Paul, a sweeping geopolitical comment like that gained a bit of traction and got quite a few comments, to be honest. The less said about some of them, the better. But
we've had our first sweeper friendly. That was almost our first sweeper war, right?
Yeah. But WSG Tirol were the away team, and I want to talk about their away fans. Because, I say fans, they're away fan. Because we have recently written about them on social media and talked about them on the podcast before. I think we posted a graphic of the average number of away fans per club in the Austrian Bundesliga last season. And there was one thing that stood out. You had at the top of the list, Sturm Graz, average away fans, 923. Pretty good going for Austria. And then you had Rapid Vienna, you had Austria Vienna, these storied clubs. And at the bottom, you had WSG Tirol, who averaged one away supporter at each game. They are surely among the worst supported top flight clubs in Europe. And so, a couple of weeks ago, when they were playing in Vienna, I went along to the game. And my focus wasn't really what was happening on the pitch. It was who's in the stands. Is there one guy who's in the stands? And you know what? Do you know how many people were in the stands that day?
Is it 0?
It is 0. It is 0. There were 0 away fans. And this prompted a lot of questions on Instagram, which we said we would answer on this show. The two main questions being, do they really only have one away fan? And why are they so badly supported? So I just thought we'd take a minute on the pod now to answer those. Do they really have only one away fan? No, but they do have so few away fans that they don't bother opening the away sector at lots of grounds they travel to, which means the WSG fans are allowed to buy tickets for other parts of the stadium.
Oh, that makes sense. So this one average is kind of misleading then.
Yes, it is misleading.
Okay. Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah.
I quite like that.
But what was quite funny is I didn't realise that at the time, and I was at this game, and Rapid won pretty comfortably. But when WSG Tirol scored, I was in the media section, and these two guys jumped up in front of me and started cheering. And I hadn't noticed they were WSG Tirol fans because they were also wearing, their club colours are the same as Rapid. They are green and white. So I just thought they were Rapid people sitting there. But
Who
they
got
weren't.
really confused.
Yeah. But they started cheering, and I was like, my God, they don't just have one away fan, they have two. They're both right in front of me. But yeah, it is slightly misleading. The other question, why are they so badly supported? Well, there's a few layers to this. So the first one is that they're from a town of 8,000 people, and their success in rising to the Bundesliga in recent years has largely been due to the involvement of the crystal company Swarovski, which is based in their hometown. So a member of the Swarovski family is their current club president, Diana Langers. And in addition to that, you have the cult club Wacker Innsbruck right on their doorstep. And everybody loves Wacker Innsbruck. They take about 1,000 supporters to their away games. And when you've got them for competition in your home region, it's not that easy to build up a fan base. But finally, I think the thing that is really interesting, and this will stop any club building up a fan base is that they have this weird history of merging and unmerging with other clubs. Which happens a fair bit in Austria, but they've merged twice before, once with Wacker Innsbruck. So, of course you're going to lose fans when you're merging with the club that you probably want to draw supporters from, and then unmerging from them again. That's going to make it quite difficult, I think.
There'd be a very attractive partnership for a merger, wouldn't they? Look, we're going to bring both of our fans into this merger.
And our diamond empire.
Oh, well, I suppose maybe that bit.
Yeah, that would help a bit more, wouldn't it? I think that brings an end to our Italian football chat for today, but we hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for listening. If you want regular updates about the kind of topics we're talking about on the pod today, do follow us on Instagram or X at SweeperPod, and please leave us a rating on your pod platform of choice too. If I could ask one more favour, lots of people that listen to the pod don't actually follow the pod on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen. Please, if you do enjoy the show, hit the follow button. That helps us algorithmically, so that would be heartily appreciated. You can join us, of course, for a bonus pod on Wednesday the 8th of October. Plenty of other content too by subscribing on Patreon at patreon.com/sweeperpod. Otherwise, we'll see you for a regular episode very soon on Wednesday the 15th of October.